I want you to be in that room tomorrow. I said yes before I knew what I was saying yes to. Susan hung up and I sat there in the dark with the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. The clock on the nightstand said 2:17 a.m. Tom was asleep next to me. He had this way of breathing when he slept, slow and deliberate, like he was practicing for a speech. I used to find it NDA ring. That night it just sounded like performance. I didn't go back to sleep. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and made coffee at 3 a.m. like a person who had lost all sense of what normal looked like. The house was quiet. Our house. The one we bought when the kids were small. The one with the dent in the wall from when Michael tried to ride his bike through the kitchen. Tom had never fixed it. He said it added character. I used to believe that too. Susan's call kept replaying in my head. He didn't write that speech. I wrote it. She had been with the company for 6 years. I'd hired her myself, back when Tom was still just the C and I was the one running the communications department. She was sharp, efficient, and she had this quiet way of taking over a project without anyone noticing. I'd recommended her to Tom when he became C. He needed someone who could make him sound human. That was the thing about Tom. He was brilliant at strategy, but terrible at sounding like he's CA read. Susan filled that gap. I pulled out my laptop and opened my email. I scrolled back 6 months to the day Susan said she'd sent the sample. There it was. Potential speech draft for C evaluation. Attached. I hadn't opened it back then because I'd trusted Susan to handle it. I clicked it now. The file loaded. And there, in the bottom right corner of every slide, was a tiny watermark. Not her name. Mine. Claire Morrison, Draft 1. I read at it. The coffee mug was RM in my hands. The steam rose and blurred the screen. He had taken my speech. The one I'd written for him, for a different context, a different role. I'd sent it to Susan as an example of the tone I wanted. She'd passed it along as her own sample. And Tom had kept it, polished it, and called it his. I closed the laptop. The screen went black and I saw my own reflection. 49 years old. Gray at the temples. The same tired eyes I'd been seeing for the last 3 years. The ones that had stopped looking at me and root looking through me. I thought about the board meeting. The investors. The press. Everyone who would watch him stand up there and deliver words that belonged to someone else. To me. At 6 a.m., Tom woke up. He padded into the kitchen in his boxers and poured himself a cup of coffee. I was still sitting at the table. You're up, Eroy, he said. Couldn't sleep. He kissed the top of my head. It was a mechanical thing, the kind of kiss you give a piece of furniture you're fond of. Big day today, he said. The board meeting's at 10. I've been working on this speech for months. I looked at him. I know. You've been very dedicated. He smiled. That smile. The one that had made me fall in love with him 25 years ago. It still worked, even though I was rooting to see the RS behind it. I've got a good feeling about this one, he said. Everything's coming together. Everything, I repeated. He didn't hear the edge in my voice. He never did. I showered and dressed. I put on the navy blazer I always wore for meetings, the one with the loose thread on the left cuff that I kept meaning to fix. I checked my phone. Susan had texted. The presentation is on his laptop. The watermark still there. He's been using Draft 1 this whole time. He never even looked at the other versions. I wrote back. I'll be there. The drive to the office was 45 minutes. I took the back roads, the ones with the trees and the old farmhouses, the ones that reminded me of when we first moved here. Tom had been so full of ideas then. He'd talked about building something that mattered, something that would outlast him. I'd believed him. I'd given him 18 years of my best ideas, my sharpest insights, my quietest sacrifices. I'd watched him climb and told myself I was climbing with him. Now I was driving to watch him deliver the speech I wrote. And I didn't even know yet about the calendar I parked in the visitor lot. I could have used the employee GA rage, but I didn't want anyone to see me coming. I walked through the lobby, past the security desk, past the receptionist who asked me if I had an appointment. I said I was here for the board meeting. She looked at her screen and nodded. 3rd floor. Room 301. The elevator was slow. I watched the numbers climb. 2, 3. The doors opened and I stepped into a hallway that smelled like new CA pet and old ambition. I could hear voices from the conference room. Low murmurs. Chairs scraping. The sound of someone setting up a projector. I walked in. The room was full of men in suits and one woman I didn't recognize. She was young, EARLY 30s, sitting at the FAR end of the table with a notepad. She looked at me and smiled. I didn't smile back. Tom was at the front of the room, adjusting the laptop. He looked up when I came in. Claire, he said. There was a flicker of surprise. I didn't know you were coming. I wanted to see it, I said. The speech. His face relaxed. He thought I was being supportive. He thought I was still the woman who cheered from the sidelines. Take a seat, he said. This is going to be good. I sat in the back. The woman with the notepad turned and looked at me again. Her nameplate said Rachel. I'd never seen her before. She looked at me like she knew something I didn't. She did. She knew my husband. She knew my schedule. She knew the speech on that screen had my name hidden in it, and she didn't see a re Tom Sta root the presentation. The lights dimmed. The slides came up. And there they were. Tiny, translucent watermay RKS in the corner of every slide. My initials. My date. Draft 1. He didn't know. He stood there in his tailored suit, the one I'd picked out for him, and he delivered the speech I'd written. Word for word. The investors nodded. The BOA RD members leaned four-way road. The woman in the corner smiled at him, and he smiled back. They had a whole language of small gestures, and I could see it all now. The way her pen paused when he paused. The way his eyes found her when he made a point. I didn't say anything. I just watched. I watched the watermay RKS pulse on the screen. I watched the room applaud. I watched Tom turn to Rachel and mouth the words, "We did it." We. After the meeting, people filed out. I stayed in my seat. Tom came over, beaming. Well, he said. What did you think I thought about the kitchen at 3 a.m.? The cold coffee. The dent in the wall. The 18 RS I'd given him, and the 6 months he'd spent lying to me. I think you should check your slides, I said. He looked at me confused. What do you mean, just check them? Before you send them out. There's something you might have missed. I stood up and walked out. I passed Rachel in the hallway. She said, you must be Claire. I've heard so much about you. Don't, I said. She blinked. Don't what? Don't pretend you don't know who I am. It's insulting. I walked to the elevator and pressed the button. She didn't follow. The doors closed and I stood there alone, watching the numbers descend. 3, 2, 1. He didn't know they were there. I didn't tell you the rest because I didn't think you'd believe me. Susan said that to me 4 hours later, in a coffee shop 2 blocks from the office. The place smelled like burnt espresso and desperation. She was drinking something with oat milk, and I was drinking black coffee because I needed the bitterness. I hadn't eaten since the night before. I don't want to believe any of it, I said. But I think we're past that. Susan pulled out her phone. She had screenshots. Emails. Calendar, our entries. She'd been documenting Tom's behavior for 6 months, ever since she realized he was using her drafts without attribution. It sta root small, she said. He'd take a line from one of my submissions and put it in his own version. Then it was a paragraph. Then it was entire sections. By the time I realized what he was doing, he'd already presented 3 speeches that were mostly my work. Did you confront him? She laughed. It was a hollow sound. I tried. He said I was being dramatic. He said the ideas belonged to the company, not to me. He said if I didn't like it, I could find another job. I read at her. He said that. And then he root having meetings with Rachel, the junior analyst. At first I thought it was just strategy sessions. But she was there every time. She was the one he'd run the speeches by. She was the one he'd test the material on. She was the one he'd give credit to. I thought about the Boa Rude room. The way Rachel had smiled at him. The way her pen had paused when his voice paused. I'd been married to Tom for 20 years. I knew the rhythm of his movements. And I'd seen something in that room that I couldn't unsee. Is he sleeping with her? I asked. Susan looked at me. Her eyes were tired. She'd been writing this alone for months. I don't know, she said. But he's telling her things he's not telling you. He's giving her access to drafts he's not giving you. And she's the one he turned to when the BOA RD meeting was over. I took out my phone. I opened Tom's calendar R. We'd read it for RS because I managed his schedule. I scrolled to the last 6 months. There were meetings with Rachel that I'd never seen. Lunch appointments. Late afternoon sessions. One of them was on a Saturday, the day we were supposed to be at the lake house. I remembered that day. He'd said he had to work. I'd believed him. She knew my schedule better than I did, I said. Susan nodded. She knows everything. She knows when you're out of town. She knows when the kids are home. She knows when you're busy with work. She's been planning this for a long time. I crushed the coffee cup in my fist. The lid popped off and brown liquid splashed across the table. Neither of us moved. Claire, Susan said. What are you going to do? I looked at the mess on the table. The coffee was spreading, soaking into a napkin. I thought about the Watermay RKS. The ones Tom didn't know about. The ones that had my name on them. I'm going to think about it, I said. I went home. The house was empty. Tom was still at the office, basking in the glow of his successful presentation. I walked through the rooms I'd decorated, the walls I'd painted, the furniture I'd chosen. I saw it all differently now. It wasn't our home. It was the set where I'd played the supporting role while he was the STAR. I went to my office. The small room off the master bedroom where I kept my files. I opened the filing cabinet and pulled out the folder labeled Personal. Inside was every draft I'd ever written for Tom. Every speech. Every talking point. Every strategy document. I'd kept them because I thought they were evidence of our partnership. They were evidence of something else. ISTA root reading. 18 RS of words. Some of them were good. Some of them were great. And every single one of them had been presented as Tom's. He'd never once acknowledged my contribution. Not in public. Not in private. Not even to me. I sat down on the floor with the folder in my lap. The CA pet was the same beige color it had been for 15 years. I'd wanted to replace it, but Tom said it was fine. I'd let it go because there were more important things to fight about. Now I couldn't remember what those things were. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Tom. Great meeting today. Thinking about dinner out to celebrate. See you at 7. ISTA read at the message. He was acting like nothing had changed. Because nothing had changed for him. He'd gotten everything he wanted. The applause. The approval. The woman in the corner who smiled at him. He didn't know the Watermay RKS existed. He didn't know I'd seen Rachel's face. He didn't know I was sitting on the floor of my own office, surrounded by 18 RS of proof that I'd been invisible. I typed back. Sure. See you at 7. I put the phone down and looked at the folder again. Then I looked at the computer on my desk. I opened a new document and STA root typing.re, intellectual property theft, chronological record. I was going to write it all down. Every speech. Every meeting. Every moment Tom had taken credit for my work. And then I was going to look at his calendar R again. And Rachel's calendar R. And every financial record I could find. He thought that was the end of it. The BOA RD meeting. The applause. The moment he stood in front of all those people and claimed ownership of words he'd never written. He didn't know they were there. But I did. And I was going to make sure he found out. I stopped looking at his face and STA root looking at his balance sheet. That was the first thing the lawyer told me to do. Her name was Marga Retchen. She was 53, saw RP as broken glass, and she'd seen enough divorce cases to know that emotion was a liability. You can be angry later, she said. Right now, you need to be SMART. Heidi found her through a friend at work, someone who'd gone through a nasty custody battle and come out the other side with everything intact. Marga Ret didn't ask why I was there. She just opened a file and waited. I need to know what I'm dealing with, I said. She nodded. Then let's START with the money. Where is it? Heidi never paid attention to our finances. Tom handled all of that. He said it was easier that way, that I had enough on my plate with work and the kids. I'd believed him. I'd signed papers without reading them. I'd trusted him. Marga Ret pulled up my credit report. She printed out a summary and slid it across the table. There's a credit card you don't know about, she said. Opened 18 months ago. Balance is $23,000 RS. ISTA read at the paper. That can't be right. It's right. There are recharges to restaurants you've never been to, hotels you've never stayed at, flowers, jewelry, all within the last year. I felt something cold move down my spine. He bought her gifts. Probably. But that's not the worst part. She turned the paper over. There's a second property. A condo downtown. Purchased 6 months ago. It's in his name only. I couldn't breathe. We don't have a condo. You do now. He's been paying the mortgage from a SEPE rate account. One you don't have access to. I thought about all the times he'd said he was working late. All the weekends he'd spent at the office. All the trips he'd taken without me. I'd been so busy being understanding that I'd never stopped to ask what he was actually doing. Can he do that? I asked. Can he just buy property without telling me he can? It's legal. But it's not SMART. MARGA Rhett leaned 4-way road. Here's what I need you to do. I need you to go home and find every financial document you can. Tax returns. Bank statements. Investment accounts. Anything with his signature on it. And I need you to copy everything before he knows you're looking. How long do I have until he gets suspicious? Right now, he thinks you're still the wife who trusts him. Use that. I went home and waited for Tom to leave for work. He kissed me on the forehead and said he'd be late again. I said okay. I watched him drive away, and then I went to his office. The door was locked. He'd never locked it before. I found the key in the kitchen drawer, the one where we kept the emergency things. The lock clicked open and I stepped inside. The room smelled like his cologne. The same cologne I'd bought him for Christmas 3 years ago. I sat down at his desk and opened the top drawer. There were files. Lots of files. Credit card statements. Bank records. A deed to the condo. I pulled out my phone and STA route taking photos. Every page. Every number. Every date. I didn't stop until my battery was at 3%. Then I found the emails. He'd left his laptop open. It was stupid. Or maybe he just didn't think I'd look. I opened his inbox and typed Rachel's name into the CRCHBAR. There were hundreds. I scrolled through them. Work emails. Personal emails. Late-night emails. She called him T and he called her R. They'd been meeting for lunch twice a week. They'd spent Valentine's Day together while I was at a work conference. They'd been to the condo. She'd signed for the deliveries. I read one that made me stop. It was from 3 weeks ago. She'd written, "Your wife doesn't suspect anything, does she?" He'd replied, "She doesn't see anything. She never has." I closed the laptop. I sat there for a long time, STA ring at the wallpaper on his desk. It was a photo of the kids from 5 years ago. I wasn't in it. I'd taken the picture. I copied everything onto a flash drive. Then I relocked the office and went back to the kitchen. I made tea and waited for him to come home. When he walked through the door at 9 o'clock, I was sitting at the table with a mug in my hands. "Long day," I asked. He sighed and loosened his tie. "You have no idea. Rachel and I had to go over the presentation again. She thinks we need to tweak the closing statement." "You and Rachel?" "Yeah. She's been really helpful." I looked at him. He was standing in the kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd made him dinner every night for 18 years, and he was telling me about her like she was just a coworker. "Like I didn't know." "Tom," I said. "Have you ever thought about the watermarks?" His face changed. Just a flicker. The kind of thing you'd miss if you weren't looking. "What watermarks?" "The ones on the speech. The ones you gave at the BOA RD meeting. Did you ever notice them?" He laughed. It was a nervous laugh, the kind he used when he wasn't sure of himself. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Maybe you should check," I said. "Just to be sure." He looked at me for a long moment. I could see him trying to figure out what I knew. He couldn't. He didn't have the information. But he could tell something was different. "Claire," he said. "Is everything okay?" I smiled. It was the smile I'd practiced in the mirror that morning. The one that said nothing and everything. "Everything's fine," I said. "I'm just tired. I'm going to bed." I walked upstairs and closed the bedroom door. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone. I had photos of everything. The credit card statements. The bank records. The condo deed. The emails. He thought that was the end of it. The questions. The Watermay RKS. The moment I asked him to check. He didn't know I'd already checked everything else. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. Tom was still asleep. I watched him for a minute, the way his chest rose and fell, the way his mouth was slightly open. He looked peaceful. He looked like a man who had no idea his world was about to collapse. I got up and went to the kitchen. I made coffee and opened my laptop. The flash drive was still in my pocket. I plugged it in and root organizing the files. Credit card statements. Bank records. The deed. The emails. I created a folder called Evidence and root filling it. At 8 o'clock, Tom came downstairs. He was dressed for work, already in his suit, already checking his phone. I have an EARLY meeting, he said. I'll grab breakfast at the office. Sure, I said. He stopped at the door. Claire. About last night. You seemed upset. I wasn't upset. I was tired. He looked at me for a moment. I could see him trying to decide whether to push. He didn't. He never did when it came to me. Okay, he said. I'll see you tonight. The door closed. I heard his CARSTART and pull out of the driveway. I waited 5 minutes. Then I called my lawyer. Margaret. I have everything. Good. Bring it in. I'll start the paperwork. I drove to her office with the flash drive in my purse. I'd stopped at a coffee shop on the way and bought myself a muffin I didn't eat. My hands were shaking. I didn't know if it was fear or adrenaline. Probably both. Margaret looked through the documents. She didn't say much. She just nodded and made notes. When she got to the emails, she stopped. These are really good, she said. Very good. He's admitted to the affair in writing. He called her R, she called him T, it's enough. She looked at me. Do you want to file for divorce? I thought about it. I thought about the kids. I thought about the house. I thought about the 18 years I'd given him, and the 18 months he'd given her. No, I said. Not yet. I want to file for separation. Legal separation. Same effect, different paperwork, she said. It gives you time to decide what you want. I know what I want. I want him to know what I know. I want him to understand what he's done. I want him to sit across from me and hear me say it. Margaret nodded. That's fair. But I need you to understand something. Once we start this process, there's no going back. He's going to fight. He's going to lie. He's going to try to make you look like the villain. I don't see a re. Good. Then let's get to work. I went home and root packing. Not my things. His things. I pulled out his suits and shirts and ties and laid them on the bed. I packed them into suitcases. I put his toiletries in a bag. I set everything by the front door. Then I called Susan. Susan. I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to send an email to the Boa Road Anonymous. Tell them there's a problem with the Watermay RKS on the presentation. Don't say where they came from. Just say they exist. Claire. What are you doing? I'm making sure he knows. I hung up and waited. An hour later, Susan texted me. Done. The Boa RD is requesting a full review of the presentation. They want to know who wrote it. Good. At 6 o'clock, Tom came home. He walked through the door and saw the suitcases by the front door. He stopped. What's this? You're moving out, I said. He read at me. What? I said you're moving out. There's a condo downtown. You can stay there. I don't have a condo downtown. Yes, you do. You bought it 6 months ago. In your name only. You've been paying the mortgage from a separate account. You've been taking Rachel there. His face went white. Claire. I don't know what you think you know. I know everything. I know about the credit CA road. I know about the condo. I know about the emails. I know about the speech. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos. The documents. The emails. The Watermay RKS. You thought I didn't see anything, I said. You were wrong. He stood there, frozen. Claire. I can explain. You can explain 18 years, Tom. 18 years of speeches you took credit for. 18 years of late nights you spent with her. 18 years of making me feel like I was invisible. I never meant to hurt you. I laughed. It was a bitter sound. You didn't think you were hurting me. That's the worst part. You didn't think about me at all. He reached for me. I stepped back. Don't, I said. Don't touch me. Claire, please. The papers will be ready by Monday. You'll be served at the office. I'd suggest you find a lawyer. Claire. One more thing, I said. The Watermay RKS. The ones on the speech. They have my initials. I wrote that speech. I wrote every speech you've given for the last 3 years. And now the BOA RD knows. He sat down on the stairs. He put his head in his hands. I'm sorry, he said. I'm so sorry. I looked at him. The man I'd loved for 22 years. The man I'd built a life with. The man who'd destroyed it all. I know you are, I said. But it's too late. He didn't say anything else. He just sat there, looking at the floor. I walked past him and went upstairs. I closed the bedroom door and sat down on the edge of the bed. I opened my phone and looked at the photos again. The credit card statements. The bank records. The condo deed. The emails. He thought that was the end of it. The suitcases. The documents. The moment I told him I knew everything, he didn't know I was just getting rude. The next few days were quiet. Tom moved out. He didn't fight it. He took the suitcases and left without another word. I watched him drive away and felt nothing. No relief. No sadness. Just emptiness. The kids called. Michael was in his junior year at college. He asked if everything was okay. I said yes. He didn't believe me, but he didn't push. Emma was in her senior year of high school. She was SMA ruder than both of us. She called and said, Mom, I know something's wrong. Just tell me when you're ready. I told her I would. I wasn't ready yet. Susan came over. She brought wine and we sat in the kitchen and talked. She told me about the BOA RD meeting. They'd reviewed the presentation. They'd seen the Watermay RKS. They'd asked Tom to explain. He'd tried to lie. He'd said it was a coincidence. He'd said someone must have put them there. They didn't believe him. The BOA RD is considering his position, Susan said. They're not happy. Good, I said. They're also considering legal action. They want to know who owns the intellectual property. Tell them I wrote it. I have proof. I have drafts. I have emails. I have everything. Susan looked at me. Claire. Are you sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything. I spent the next week documenting. I went through every file I had. Every speech. Every talking point. Every strategy document. I matched them to the dates Tom had presented them. I created a timeline. It was exhaustive. It was damning. It was everything I needed. MARGA Rhett called. The BOA RD has reached out to me. They want to talk to you. Good. They're offering a settlement. They want to keep this quiet. They don't want a scandal. What kind of settlement? Financial. They're willing to pay for the intellectual property. They're also willing to support your claim against Tom. I thought about it. The money would be nice. But that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted Tom to know. I wanted him to understand. I'll meet with them, I said. But I have conditions. What are they? I want Tom removed as C. I want a public acknowledgement of my work. And I want Rachel gone. MARGA Rhett paused. That's aggressive. I know. I'll see what I can do. I met with the BOA RD 3 days later. They were nervous. They didn't want to be there. They didn't want to admit that they'd been fooled by Tom. But they also didn't want to lose their reputation. Mrs. Morrison, the chairman said. We've reviewed your evidence. We're prepared to offer you a substantial settlement. I don't want a settlement, I said. I want what's mine. What do you mean? I mean I want credit for the work I did. I want Tom to acknowledge that I wrote those speeches. I want him to publicly apologize. I want him removed as C. The chairman looked at me. That's a lot to ask. I wrote 18 years worth of speeches. I made him look good. I made you look good. And I did it without ever asking for credit. That ends now. They didn't agree right away. But they didn't say no. I left the meeting with the promise of a decision within the week. I went home and waited. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I'd never lived alone before. I'd gone from my parents' house to Tom's house. I'd never had my own space. It was strange. It was also liberating. I sta root rea arranging the furniture. I moved the couch to the other wall. I took down the photos of Tom and put up photos of the kids. I changed the curtains. I painted the bedroom. It was small things, but they felt like big things. I sta root writing again. Not for Tom. For me. I wrote about the experience. I wrote about the betrayal. I wrote about the watermay RKS. I put it all down on paper. It was like therapy. Except it was real. One night, Tom called. I didn't answer. He left a message. Claire. I need to talk to you. Please call me back. I didn't call him back. I wasn't ready. I didn't know if I ever would be. He called again the next day. And the day after that. I ignored every call. Finally, he showed up at the house. I was in the kitchen when I heard the doorbell. I looked through the window and saw him standing there. He looked terrible. Unshaven. Tired. Nothing like the man who'd stood in front of the Boa RD and delivered my speech. I opened the door. What do you want? I need to talk to you. Please. Talk. He looked at me. I'm losing everything. The Boa RD is going to fire me. Rachel left. The kids won't answer my calls. I have nothing. You have the condo, I said. That's not a home. That's a place I bought because I was trying to escape. Escape what? Escape the life I'd built. Escape the pressure. Escape the feeling that I wasn't good enough. I looked at him. So you found someone who made you feel good enough. And you took everything I gave you and pretended it was yours. Yes. That's not a reason. That's an excuse. He nodded. I know. I'm not going to fix this for you. I'm not going to make it better. You did this. You have to live with it. I know, he said again. Tom. I loved you for 20 years. I gave you everything I had. And you threw it away because you wanted to feel good about yourself. He looked down at the ground. I'm sorry. I know you are. But sorry isn't enough. He didn't say anything else. He just stood there, looking at me like he was waiting for me to change my mind. I didn't. I couldn't. Goodbye, Tom, I said. I closed the door. I walked back to the kitchen and looked at the painting I'd just finished. It was abstract. It didn't mean anything. It just existed. Like me. In the moment. Not defined by him. And I knew that I was going to be okay. I took a deep breath and looked around the room. The new curtains. The arranged furniture. The painting I'd made myself. I stopped looking at his face and sta root looking at mine. It was different now. Older. Tired. But there was something else too. Something I hadn't seen in a long time. Determination. I didn't know what the future held. But for the first time in 18 years, I wasn't going to let someone else decide it for me. The Boa RD decision came on a Thursday. Marga Rhett called me at 7 in the morning. They're removing him. Effective immediately. They're issuing a public statement acknowledging your work. And they're offering you a position. A position consultant. They want you to lead their communication strategy. Full-time. With your name on everything. I sat down on the edge of my bed. What about Rachel? She's been let go. They found evidence she knew about the theft. She didn't report it. She's out. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. But it was a clean tired, the kind that came from finishing something that needed to be finished. The kids, I said. Have they heard? Michael called me this morning. He said he'd talk to you later. Emma too. They're proud of you, Claire. Good. That's good. I hung up and sat there for a while. The sun was coming through the window, hitting the new curtains I'd put up. I'd painted the room a soft gray. It used to be beige. Everything used to be beige. I'd let him choose the colors. I'd let him choose everything. I got dressed and went to the office. The building looked different now. Or maybe I looked different. The receptionist smiled at me and said, Mrs. Morrison. They're waiting for you in the conference room. I walked in and saw the Boa Road. The chairman stood up. Claire. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having me. We've reviewed your proposal. We're prepared to accept it. Tom's resignation will be effective next week. We'll issue a statement acknowledging your contributions. And we'd like you to take over the communications department. I looked at them. The men in suits. The one woman who'd been watching me since the beginning. They were offering me everything I'd wanted. And I realized it wasn't enough. I'll accept on one condition, I said. Name it. I want to write my own story. I want to tell the truth about what happened. Not the sanitized version. The real version. The chairman nodded. That's fair. I walked out of the meeting and called Susan. It's done. He's out. Congratulations. Susan. I want to thank you for telling me the truth. I didn't tell you everything, she said. I didn't tell you about Rachel because I wasn't sure. I didn't want to hurt you if I was wrong. You weren't wrong. I know. But I should have told you sooner. I'm sorry. You were trying to protect me. I understand that now. I hung up and drove home. The house was quiet. The way I liked it now. I walked through the rooms and saw all the changes I'd made. The new curtains. The rearranged furniture. The painting on the wall. It was mine now. Everything was mine. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. I'd been working on a document for weeks. It was the story. My story. Every detail. Every betrayal. Every moment of triumph. I'd kept it private. But now I was ready to share it. I emailed it to the Boa Road. And to the press. And to everyone who had ever doubted me. I thought about Tom. He was probably in the condo now alone. Drinking too much. Regretting everything. I didn't feel sorry for him. I felt sorry for the man I'd thought he was. He called that night. I answered. Claire. I saw the statement. You told them everything. Yes. Why did you do it? Because you took everything from me. The words. The credit. The YRS. And I let you. I let you because I thought that was what love was. I was wrong. Claire, please. I need you to forgive me. I don't forgive you. I don't think I ever will. But I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. Done with what? Done with you. Done with us. Done with being invisible. He didn't say anything. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. I'm going to rebuild my life, I said. I'm going to do it without you. And I'm going to be better than I ever was before. Claire. Don't do this. It's already done. I hung up. I stood up and walked to the window. The street was quiet. The trees were rooting to turn. Autumn was coming. The season of change. I thought about everything that had happened. The phone call. The Boa RD meeting. The Watermay RKS. The moment I'd realized the truth. I thought about the woman I'd been. The one who'd believed in sacrifice. The one who'd stayed quiet. The one who'd let him take credit for her work. She was gone now. I was someone else. Someone who knew her worth. Someone who wasn't afraid to speak up. He didn't know they were there. The Watermay RKS. The evidence. The truth. But I did. And I was ready to move four-way road. Not with him. Not because of him. Because of me. He came to the house one last time. It was a Sunday. The kind of Sunday that used to mean pancakes and coffee and the New York Times spread across the kitchen table. Now it meant I was alone. I'd gotten used to it. The quiet. The space. The way the sunlight hit the floor in the morning. I'd rude to like it. He RD the CAR pull into the driveway. I didn't have to look out the window. I knew the sound of his engine. It was the same CAR he'd driven for the last 5 years. The same CAR I'd helped him pick out. I didn't move from the kitchen table. The doorbell rang. I didn't answer. I knew he'd come in anyway. He still had a key. I'd meant to change the locks. I hadn't gotten around to it. Maybe I'd wanted him to come. Maybe I'd needed to see him one more time. The door opened. I heard his footsteps in the hallway. He paused at the living room. I imagined him taking in the changes. The new couch. The missing photos. The painting I'd done. He'd hate the painting. I didn't see Claire, I didn't turn around. I just read at the open window and the way the breeze made the curtains move. I'm in the kitchen. He walked in. He looked older than I remembered. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 6 months ago. His shirt was rumpled. His hair was longer. He'd been drinking. I could smell it on him. I needed to see you, he said. Sit down. He pulled out a chair and sat across from me. He looked at the table. It was covered with papers. The divorce papers. The separation agreement. The settlement offer. All of it. Marga Rhett said the Boa RD is paying you. The Boa RD is paying me for the intellectual property I created. That's not the same. Same thing. It's not. They're paying me for the speeches I wrote. The ones you took credit for. He nodded. I know. Tom. Do you even understand what you did? Not just the affair. Not just the condo. Not just the IRS of lies. I'm talking about the speeches. The ones you delivered. The ones you stood in front of rooms full of people and claimed as your own. I didn't think about it like that. Exactly. You didn't think about it. You didn't think about me. You didn't think about the hours I spent crafting those words. The late nights. The sacrifices. You just took them because they were convenient. He looked down at his hands. They were shaking. I was trying to build something. You were trying to build yourself. At my expense. I'm sorry, Claire. I'm sorry for all of it. For the affair. For the lies. For taking the credit. I know you're sorry. You've said that. But sorry doesn't fix it. Sorry doesn't give me back the IRS. Sorry doesn't undo the fact that you made me feel invisible. He reached across the table. I pulled my hands away. Don't. Claire, please. I know I screwed up. I know I made horrible choices. But I'm still the man you married. No, you're not. The man I married would never have done this. The man I married would have been proud of me. He would have wanted the world to know that I was the one behind him. I was proud of you. I was always proud of you. Then why didn't you say it? Why didn't you ever once, in 18 years, stand up and tell people that I wrote those speeches? He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because you wanted the glory for yourself, I said. You wanted everyone to think you were brilliant. And you couldn't do that if they knew the truth. I was scared. Of what? Of not being good enough. Of being found out. Of everyone realizing that you were the smart one and I was just there. I looked at him. For the first time, I saw something I'd never seen before. Vulnerability. He was terrified. He'd been terrified his whole life. And he'd used me to cover it up. Tom, I loved you. I loved you so much that I gave you everything. My time. My energy. My words. And you took them and you pretended they were yours. You made me complicit in your lie. I know. And now I have to live with that. I have to live with the fact that I let it happen. That I was so afraid of losing you that I didn't stand up for myself. He looked at me. His eyes were red. He was crying. I'd seen him cry only twice in 22 years. Once when his father died. Once when he thought he'd lost a deal. Claire, can you ever forgive me? No. Please. No, Tom. I can't. I can't forgive you. But I can let you go. He read at me. Let me go, yes. That's what I'm doing. I'm letting you go. Not for you. For me. I can't keep CAing this. I can't keep being angry. I can't keep giving you space in my head. So, that's it, you're just done? I'm done. I'm done being invisible. I'm done being your crutch. I'm done pretending that the last 18 years were anything other than a transaction. He stood up. He pushed the chair back and walked to the window. He stood there with his back to me. Is there anything I can do? He asked. One thing. What? Leave. And don't come back. He turned around. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Maybe he was. Maybe he'd never really seen me. I'm sorry, he said again. I know. Goodbye, Claire. Goodbye, Tom. He walked out of the kitchen. I heard him go through the living room. I heard him open the front door. I heard him close it. Then I heard his start and pull away. I sat at the table for a long time. The papers were still there. The divorce papers. The settlement. The evidence of everything I'd done. I looked at the painting on the wall. It was the one I'd done after he left. All blues and grays. Abstract. Meaningless. But it was mine. It was something I'd created for myself. I stood up and walked to the window. The street was empty. The trees were bare. Winter was coming. I didn't mind. I'd never minded the cold. I thought about the phone call at 2:14 a.m. The Watermay RKS. The BOA RD meeting. The moment I'd realized the truth. I thought about Susan. The kids. MARGA Ret. The BOA Road. All the people who'd helped me. And I thought about Tom. The man I'd married. The man I'd loved. The man who'd taken everything and given nothing. I didn't hate him. I didn't love him. I didn't feel anything at all. I was done. I walked back to the table. I picked up the divorce papers and signed them. I put them in an envelope and addressed it to my lawyer. Then I went upstairs and took a shower. I stood under the hot water until my skin was pink. I got dressed and went to the kitchen. I made myself breakfast. I ate it slowly. I read the paper. I looked out the window one last time. The clouds were breaking. The sun was coming through. It was cold outside, but the light was bright. I picked up my phone and called Emma. Hey, Mom, she said. You okay? Yeah, honey. I'm okay. I'm actually really good. I was. For the first time in 18 years, I was free. I hung up the phone and looked around the room. The painting, the curtains, the furniture. All the things I'd chosen for myself. This was my house now. My life. My words. And I wasn't going to let anyone take them from me again.